Ah, She-Hulk. What better period of human history to present this icon of femininity than here in 2022? It could be surmised simply from the title, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, that us, the viewers, were going to be in for a treat. But the category of movies and TV that is aptly named so bad it's good genre is a very fine line. Can She-Hulk Attorney at Law cut it? Will all the woman production teams show off their skills in the way that they've been desiring since the dawn of Hollywood? Well, it wasn't really looking good since before the show even came out. Now that it's here, we can bask in all its womanly glory. What better way to start the show than to present an everyday example of toxic masculinity? She-Hulk is presenting one of her closing statements to some colleagues, one a paralegal woman, the other a toxic lawyer man. Of course, the paralegal shows extreme support for the overcooked speech, while the toxic man attempts to bring She-Hulk down and say that he should be the one making the closing statement instead. He is then promptly kicked out of the room. Who cares about criticism when it's coming from a toxic male, am I right? It's not like generic toxic male knows what he's doing anyway. And in the background of the scene, we get treated to some of the worst subliminal messaging of all time. A word of advice: if you ever see a satanic shrine like this in the real world, run. Run fast. We then cut to the She-Hulk's origin story, and after some extremely irrelevant talk about hot Cheetos, we learn that Bruce has invented a clunky device that attaches to his wrist and allows him to not turn into the Hulk anymore. Boy, I wonder how many hours in the writing room it took for them to cook that one up. Next, they'll be inventing a machine to bring Iron Man back from the dead. Did I mention that we also get some dialogue about Captain America's sex life, or lack thereof? Exciting stuff. Suddenly, a plot device appears out of nowhere and causes their car to drive straight off a cliff. And, in a stunning and brave turn of events, instead of Bruce saving his cousin's life like in the comics, she has to save him. He's only the Hulk after all. Suddenly, some of Bruce's blood gets into her system, and before you know it, she's hulking out and running off into the woods. This brings us to one of the most important scenes in the entire show, and that's not just my opinion. She-Hulk enters a bar bathroom, only to get mobbed by women who immediately assume her current state is due to some form of, let's just say, male mistreatment. Then, they begin to give her clothes and makeup and girl time in what feels like one of the fakest scenes ever written. 'Cause one of the things these ladies didn't give her was a ride home. So instead, she's standing outside the bar when a pack of rabid, toxic males begins moving across the open plains. These animals just can't help but harass any female they see. They began whooping and hollering at this total five, I mean She-Hulk, and it comes across just so contrived. Come on, show, you can at least represent the toxic male with some accuracy. Anyway, the harassment continues until She-Hulk gets real angry at the catcalling and hulks out, only to have Buddy Bruce show up just in time to prevent a triple murder that would have put her away for life. What a hero! I'm tired of saying She-Hulk, so from now on, she's just Shulk. Shulk wakes up at a beautiful beach house in Mexico where Buddy Bruce is downstairs in his laboratory analyzing her blood. We quickly learn that due to certain unspecified genetic anomalies, She-Hulk is like Hulk, but better. The Hulk juice simply works better for her. So much so that Bruce was able to use Shulk's blood to heal his arm that was completely crippled when Hulk performed the snap in Endgame, essentially negating all of the consequences and weight that this action originally carried. Good job, show. Jen, or Shulk, immediately asks for one of those special arm things that Bruce was wearing moments earlier. Makes sense, but no, then we would have no Shulk show. Bruce just says no, you have to live with your newfound hulkiness. Bruce then begins to do his best Mr. Miyagi as he begins to teach Shulk how to behave by mansplaining everything. Fortunately for Shulk, she's already good at everything and doesn't lose control of her personality when she hulks out. So everything Bruce had to overcome over the course of many movies is simply not a problem for Shulk. We get no real explanation for this, other than it needed to happen because the feminist writers of this show didn't want to have a real story arc. One could theorize that Bruce lost himself when he transformed because of all his trauma, from his childhood abuse to his mother being killed, him trying to end his own life, etc., etc., while Shulk doesn't have any trauma, so she can just slip into her green suit without consequence. Oh wait, I guess that's not right, because as this now legendary scene explains...
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you. So all of this just feels like projecting a lot of shit onto me.
Oh, I see. Bruce couldn't possibly understand trauma and anger because nobody catcalls him or tries to explain things to him. That makes sense. She says she controls her anger in this way all the time. But remember this from literally 2 minutes ago?
Yeah, where you going? So what, you too good to talk to us?
We then continue to get a montage of Shulk doing Hulk things better, cause she's just better. And if you need any more proof that this show was written by and for a bunch of wine moms, look no further than the one thing Bruce says is a benefit of being a Hulk. You get to process alcohol at a faster rate. Oh yeah, you go girl. Shulk then loses control of her feels and tries to leave when we get treated to one of the saddest excuses for CGI and physics this episode has given us so far. Unbelievable. Look at those rocks. That makes no sense. We then continue to get treated to one of the goofiest fight scenes someone could imagine. It's just plain boring. Anyway, she eventually leaves, and then we reconnect up with where we were in the beginning. The closing statement, which becomes one of the most hilariously bad scenes I think I've ever witnessed. Why is she here? Why is she dressed like that? Who made these terrible decisions? Now watch this tragedy.
Who the hell are you? Jennifer Walters, attorney at law.
This literally looks like it was made by some high school fangirls, and that's almost doing them a disservice. You're telling me that this show has the corporate might of Disney behind it, and this is what they came up with? This was the final product? Someone watched this and was satisfied enough to say, yes, put this on Disney Plus? I don't want to fail to mention the after-credits scene, where we see our heroes continuing to talk about Captain America's sex life. A scene that, if reversed and had Bruce constantly talking about, say, Captain Marvel's body count, would get huge backlash for being misogynist. By the way, if you don't like this show for any reason at all, then you are a misogynist. Just saying. That's what I've learned about She-Hulk. Episode 2 begins with everyone already hailing She-Hulk as a hero, even though she did absolutely nothing. She immediately gets fired from her job as a lawyer because her hulkiness is a liability, and the stunt she pulled in court caused them to lose the case. We then get to see Jen with her family, where you can tell the writers were trying to be funny, but it just falls flat. Jen is quickly rehired by a firm that represents supervillains. This being the general idea behind the series, which, truth be told, could potentially be interesting if done right. Unfortunately, we're off to a bad start. Shulk's first client is supposed to be Abomination, who tried to take out her cousin Bruce in the first Hulk movie. Abomination claims to be a changed man, and Shulk believes him and agrees to take the case. That's basically the entire episode. So yeah, not much going on with the series overall. What an embarrassment. She-Hulk is already the best at everything, so there is no story arc. She's the best lawyer, and no toxic male can bring her down. She's the best Hulk, even though she had to go through nothing to get there, even if toxic Bruce wants to get her down. She spends a whole 2 minutes coming to terms with her newfound powers, and before you know it, she's famous. This is what happens when you don't focus on storytelling. This show was never about getting the best writers to tell the best story. It was about hiring a bunch of activist women just so they could say lines like "all women behind the camera," then letting them sit in the writing room with their Chardonnay and seeing what kind of garbage comes out. And you get this. A show clearly more concerned with its messaging than it's actually getting people to come back for the next episode. But it all backfires on them because all this does is create more material for people to completely demolish and expose. So they're doing a good job of keeping the people they hate the most in business. I guess I should thank them for that.